we were talking in a staff meeting about what we should do this Sunday. Do we just charge straight on into programming? We eventually said, no, some time just answering questions and sharing what's going on would be good. So I thought that's what we would do. I mentioned in announcements I had great plans for putting together a presentation, but I got busy moving my office yesterday and a pet blessing, and then I just sat down. So I thought that, one of the ways that I can be responsive is what questions do you have that you've been yearning to ask? And we'll take it from there. And if you don't have any questions, then I certainly can talk for about 2 hours on everything that's been going on. Linda Benny.
Does the church have flood insurance? And I do remember when I was on the vestry that we have a hurricane recovery fund or something that somebody.
Sure. The church does have insurance. The church has insurance through the Church Insurance Company of Vermont. Most Episcopal churches use this insurance company. It's typically better coverage than that which churches can get on the open market. They tend to be a little bit more loving and pay out a little bit more. As part of our insurance, we do have flood. It is a $1 million limit as far as I can see so far, but we have our Chancellor, Casey Weidmiller, looking at that for us. The adjuster actually hasn't been able to come out yet. The adjuster comes tomorrow. It's when it comes to storms, and you all know this through your own insurance, I would think, there's a deductible that is based on a percent value of the buildings. So our deductible is based on a 2% value, I believe. Years ago, I solicited a gift from Richard Briscoe. It was in his will that he would establish a fund called the Carolyn Richard Briscoe, I guess it's Disaster Relief Fund. And that is a donor-restricted gift to the church that comes out of a foundation he had in Memphis. It gives about $30,000 a year forever. And then that money comes into the church. It resides in the endowment until it meets the hurricane deductible, which was about $200,000 for us. So the deductible money is there, and then we'll hit the limit. We're working on guesstimates of how much it's going to cost to recover and restore. Will we go over $1 million? I would guess so, based on what I've seen. And then that's where I will cry out for help, like the lepers, right? Did that answer your question, Linda? Oops. Yes, Art.
Turns out he was very athletic, not only playing, but then pulling the stops back and forth to make the illusion of two manuals. My question comes to this. Just before the service began, we wondered what we could do on our chimes. And there was a bell, and Michelle rang this bell. It was wonderful. It just was really touching to hear that sound. My question is that part of a full set of bells or a one-off?
We only have one bell. So Art is praising basically the worship that we had this morning, saying very good, creative, uplifting, good use of musical instruments. We have one handbell here at Trinity-by-the-Cove, and I can't really ring it. We were laughing about who was going to ring the standing bell so everybody knew to stand up. Clergy aren't really allowed to use that bell, only choir members. So again, the broader question is worship and what that does and gives to us and how we enter into it. It brings a great sense of comfort, worship, as we love God and as we are here with one another. And so as much as possible, All of the clergy, the musicians are crafting the liturgies so that they do bring comfort and relief and also inspiration. All the way down to the bulletins. I wanted to make sure to have bulletins for you all today. So Tuesday afternoon I was up at Prestige Printing, the only place I could find Wi-Fi, putting the final touches on the bulletin and getting them to print for us. So we'll have, you can't really say the Lord willing and the creek don't rise anymore. But we'll have bulletins next week too. So again, the whole idea from my perspective is so much in the world is turned upside down for so many people. The church should ever be a place where we do find that sense of sanctuary that then empowers us and feeds us so that we can care for the community. If you have a sense of the airplane oxygen mask, you got to get that mask on, and then you can help everybody around you. Other questions? Chuck.
Is there an updated status of the organ console?
Yeah, let me talk just about broader damage. I can't remember what I've shared. I didn't want to shock everybody because you all are going through your own shock. Yeah. So the damage in the church, we have the church offices, first of all. Then we have the church mouse, the Sunday school classrooms, which incorporate a nursery and youth room, and then we have the church itself. All of those buildings experienced flood damage from about 1 inch in the church office to about, what do you think, Nick, 2 inches in the church mouse, 3 inches in the church mouse, to a good 2.5 feet in the Sunday school classrooms in church. Let's talk about the church first. So the floodwaters were beginning to recede. Virginia and I and the children raced over to open the doors to get as much water out as we could. We used push brooms and squeegees to try and save the altar dais, all that beautiful parquet walnut. So, in terms of mitigation, we tried our best to get that done. And then immediately the next day, all the church doors were open to try and dry out as much we could. The damages that we have are related to the pews. So the bottoms of the pews, all the molding we have taken off, but it looks like the pews are going to make it. I mean, they're beautiful wood. They're drying out. The pew kneeler cushions were soaked. Those had to be removed, so we'll have to replace those. Those pew cushions that make seating through long sermons comfortable, those will all have to be redone as well. So those are the pews. The process for fixing those will be, we have a tent coming next week. The pews will be removed and placed in the tent so that they can start to be restored with the bottoms put back on and tending to the kneelers. So that's the pews. The floor, so far as we can tell, it's kind of okay. Some of the sealant that was on is all flaking off, so that will have to be cleaned and then resealed. So that's the plan. We have a vendor coming out on October 17th to do that. All of the walls in the church, of course, have been cut at about this level high. Why? Because you want to get all of that wet material out so mold doesn't grow. So that has been done around the whole church, including the usher's closet, the bathroom, back in the sacristy. So that's the walls. We anticipate sheetrock going up maybe Wednesday. So right now what's happening in the church is we have all those hot air dryers getting as much moisture out. I think when it gets to 6% or something is when the mold restoration guy will say you're okay to put up sheetrock. And then once we get that okay, we'll be ready to go. The next part of the damage that we found maybe about 2 days ago, we were trying to save that altar dais. Again, that's the altar rail behind to the reredos, or that white wall with all of the beautiful woodwork. That had to come out. So that was a bummer for me. That made me, well, someone asked me how I'm doing, right? When I go into the church and see it like that, I turn into a little bit of a wreck because it just stinks. But it's going to be fine. We'll rebuild it and it'll be beautiful. But seeing that for me I have an internal response of sadness. So that will all be redone, but we had the architects out. They took all the measurements, so it should go up right as rain, just like it was before. Of course, on that altar dais was the organ console. So there are two parts, at least in my brain, two parts to an organ. One is the organ console, and that's where you have the keyboard and the footboard. That's where Tripp sits every Sunday, right? And then there's the organ pipes, which is that whole area up above in the balcony. It's not really a balcony. You can't sit up there. Some people think you can. It's pretty funny. So we have the organ pipes and the organ console. The organ console, we've had the organ technician out a couple of times, believe it or not, over the past week. That had to be removed, and it will have to be rebuilt. When you hear the word organ, you can think money. So we have a ballpark estimate from the organ technician on that. I think it was, Helene, correct me if I'm wrong, 200 to 300 on the organ console and 100 to 200 on the pipes. So the organ console, of course, got flooded. They're going to try and save. I mean, I told him to give me the worst case scenario, and I hope he's right? You kind of want to add on money to whatever he gave us, but I told him to give me worst case. The organ pipes, it appears, I thought that we had sort of survived without roof damage, but I think there must be something going on up there, maybe between the steeple and where the roof starts for the nave. I think water got in somewhere in a seam and dropped straight down into the organ pipes, which then led down into the wind chests. So that's not great news. But the good news is we have an organ technician. They're working on it, and I think we have a second bid coming out just because that's part of our accounting principles. When we have expensive stuff, we try and make sure we're getting the best price. So I think that covers, so other parts are the usher's closet, the bathroom, the sacristy. Main damage in all of those, of course, is the walls, but then all of the cabinetry. That all had to be taken out. Trying to save all the tops so that we can reuse those. Again, trying as best we can to save money. And that covers the church. If you go on the outside of the church, some of the brick pathways, a little bit of movement in those with the floodwaters. The two outbuildings are basically masonry, so they didn't have to tear out the walls. I've put in temporary air conditioners, one, to hold many of the clergy books because storage is an issue here now that we want to get programming up and running. That's church damage. Did I get everything? I think I did. Any questions about the church itself? Timeline, I mentioned a little bit. So the day of the storm, about 3 o'clock, I still had power, I think. I called up to church insurance and I said, I have a claim. And then that same day, I was in touch with Chris. We were texting back and forth. Who's our roofer? Greenling. I went online and put in a work request immediately. The roofer was out the next day, Thursday. Did an initial inspection. Again, were there any major leaks? It wasn't raining, so we couldn't really figure out. Some damage over to the rectory up on the roof there. Some of the tiles flew off, and those wind turbines, blew crooked. And then Saturday is when our general contractor, D. Garrett, came out the architect came on Friday. D. Garrett came out on Saturday and promised us a workforce on Monday. So the Monday crew was hard at work. Bert Warner, is he here? Bert Warner, who is having some terrible back pain, had one of his crews free. So he donated a crew for a week who really helped move things along as well. So, when I preach, I'm crying for help. It is being answered. So we really did get a lot done. Volunteers came and were working to get the carpets out of all the Sunday school classrooms, move all those contents out, get those stored and cleaned. So a tremendous amount of work has been going on the past couple of days. That's the church. Sunday school classrooms, again, all those contents. I think Linda sent me an email last night saying about half of the contents were lost. For those of you who don't know about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, all of those contents are all handmade, hand-drawn. That's a piece of the beauty of the curriculum. She's reached out to some colleagues around the country. One is coming down to help her sort through some stuff on Monday. So, a lot of outpouring of help with regard to Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. The youth room was equally affected. I heard from one youth, who I will not name because she's very close to me, said, "The red couch is gone." I'm like, yeah, the red couch is gone. And, it may be that you get a brown couch. No, I want a red couch. Everybody has their opinion about how to rebuild and restore, even our youth. And so please be kind to me. I'd love to hear everything on your mind, but know that can't please everybody at all times. The nursery, that was also wrecked. But one of the saving things in the nursery is we had put down a floor that looks like it survived. So that was a fun experience. Also, the air conditioners all over there for the Sunday school classrooms, church mouse, those were all high up, so they were undamaged. The church, the air conditioner, electricity, all of the mechanical in the church. The two air conditioner condensers outside were zapped. Those were underwater. It looks, though, like we are able to get some that might come down next week. So that was another cry for help that was answered in a fascinating way, as well as an electrical panel that might show up, too, very soon. Again, a cry for help that came down. How some people keep electrical panels in their inventory, I don't know. But one of the worries for me was all the supply chain issues. Of course, with electrical panel and two condensers for the church, we're in great shape for the church on that. So we want to hope that all works out. Sunday school classroom, church mouse, Nick Stano did a wonderful job. He was over there pulling out shelving, hoping to save all of the shelving, to cut maybe the inch or so of damage off and put them on pedestals. That's about a $20,000 savings, so that's good on you. Going over to church offices, it got just about an inch of water in there. You wonder why when the water line was up to here. Well, the church offices are surrounded now by this tall hall on two sides, and the only way water could get in was through the front door. So it sort of seeped in the front door and then spread. But guess what? Wet carpet is still wet carpet. The carpet in there was double glued, so we couldn't get volunteers to get it up. So it was just sitting there. Finally, they brought the machine over that got it up in no time. So, but those are looking to be in good shape. A little bit worried about mold in that building, but partly it's, I think, our oldest building. So there's a little bit of mold in there anyway, I think. But we'll see how that goes. The clergy all moved their books and all their contents out, as did other employees. So they'll be working at home. We asked St. Paul's up on Davis for a favor to give us a little office space for our bookkeeper. So Paula is there. We still wanted to have Carrie, our parish administrative officer, on campus for this. So she's in that little room over there. And of course, I'm going to get in all my steps walking back and forth, right? That's offices. One of the neat things about the offices is we found the terrazzo floor, which is very much like this one, was all underneath, but I think it's just too hard to save. So we're going to put a floor over that as a better stewardship thing. Did I cover all the damage? Did I miss anything that you all had a question about damage-wise? Rectory. Rectory was at 11 feet elevation. This is about 10. So we were high and dry. We watched the water come in down the channel and then start flowing across the west parking lot into Galleon Drive, and then flowing out towards the Gulf. About 2 o'clock it switched and started coming from the Gulf down Galleon Drive, and then around and draining into the channel and bay. We gained a porta potty. So a porta potty floated all the way from the Gulf, not at the rectory. That's right. It was right over here by the mangroves on this side. The porta potty guy came the other day and picked it up, and he was sort of laughing. He said, this was way over on the Gulf. So I said, "You need any help?" Thankfully, he said no. So it was stinky. It wasn't stinky. Yes, Mark. I think it's all okay. I'm going to have Lance Julian is going to call out the surveyor to just give it a double check. One of the aspects of this is we've called on all our vendors to come out and give us an inspection. So we had the AV people looking at, is the AV in the church okay? All the air conditions have been checked out. We'll have that checked out. The roof guy was here. So we're working on, as far as I can remember, getting everybody, out here. And I should also say now, it's not only about me right now. So those first couple days, it was Chris and I were really running to get stuff done, and then volunteers coming. We've brought on, we've sort of reinvigorated the building committee that helped us do this project. So John Ike is chair, and we'll call on many of those same people who were involved as needed to give us that advice and talent to get this project done well, on time, and hopefully under budget. But there was no budget. But we're trying to put together a budget. Does that answer your question? Yes, Jackie?
Were there any learnings from this experience that will be relevant to the reconstruction?
Were there any learnings?
In terms of
Is there?
being done differently the next time?
Sure. Well, let me back up to where we started, which is soliciting the gift from Richard Briscoe, right? So preparing for storms. The decision that was to go up here to 11 feet or 10 feet, which was whatever code was at the time. So those were all ideas that we had years ago that provided us with this space right now. I mean, can you imagine the hall at the former level? We wouldn't be sitting right here. We're getting our architect to give us a price on, and this is more strategic plan related, right? Which we've had these ideas going for many years. Going up was a new one. But over here on the office space, the idea was to, now the idea would be to raise that and go up another story. So you would have a multi-purpose space, which for all city, we don't have any more city people here anymore, I don't think. For all city planning purposes, we don't say we are putting in a thrift store in Port Royal. What we say is we have multi-purpose space that would probably be used for the church mouse underneath, and then offices above. But at this point, that's a project that's, still a ways away. I don't have the energy to raise money for that, and I don't know if you all have the money to give. So the other idea that might be something that we do work on is when we created this space, the middle came out, but the two arms, the conference room and the family room and the library and the choir room, there was enough space in the roof that we could raise the floor. And that's true also, we believe, for the Sunday school classrooms, youth room, and nursery. So it makes a whole lot of sense to me, if we have the money, to raise those floors right now. Now, the architect's working on that, but the biggest problem is not just raising the floors and moving some windows up. The site work involved in that is what's going to be expensive. So tying in the elevation of those buildings to that courtyard right there and the mouse, and then all of the parking lot around will be one of the challenges. And one of the things I learned about this project is when they get into site work, it's really challenging because they try and plan, and they plan all the elevations, but they tend to get it wrong. And if you're sort of wrong by an inch, it doesn't really help. So, they sort of have to, it's almost they have to kind of play with it at the end. So those are the lessons learned. There's some things where you kick yourself in the foot, and I'm trying not to beat myself up. But when Ian came, I cleared out the church. I had all the books out. I had all the cushions out. This go round, I didn't do that. Ian. When Irma was coming, that's when I cleared out the church. This one, I didn't. Had we gotten all those pew cushions up into the steeple, we would have saved $45,000. But they were old anyway. You all had used them really well, right? It was time for new pew cushions anyway. You all had been to church too much. So did that sort of answer your question? Some of the things that work really well that we used during Irma as well is just communications. So all of our office information, all of our files, it's all cloud-based. So no matter where we are, we don't have a server that can blow up and float away. And then there's the ability of any clergy person to log on to Constant Contact and send you all an email. So those are aspects of what we've done in the past that still work. But if you all come up with something else, don't send me an email. Just write me a note, and I'll put it in my pile of notes to read, right? Any other questions? Yes?
Did we sandbag the doors of the church?
We did.
We did.
So, one of the tools that we had used in Ian was it's a black Irma, Ian. It's a black strip that you can set down, and as the water comes up, it turns into a sandbag. So we had those on all the doors.
Did you have it on the office door?
We would have, yes. We were worried more. We were worried also this courtyard in here, we worry about that flooding. All the pipes are big enough to hold all the contents of the water, but the strainers sometimes get in the way. So we have to pick up the strainers. So we were worried more about that than other spots. But we did have sandbags on all the doors. Any other questions? No one has asked me timeline. Like, when are we going to get back in the church? Aren't you all curious about that? Or you all just want to hang out here for a while? When do we get back in the church? I'm not going to give you a timeline. What I will say is we have a great jump start on this. I think that with the general contractor getting here quickly, with Bert's team getting this broken down, with some of the cries for help that have been heard relative to floor, wall over there, and HVAC, that we'll be in there, I think, sooner than you think, sooner than you imagine. But don't make promises on a timeline, right? But again, I'll know a whole lot more by the end of this week. Yes, Chuck.
What are the opportunities that you see in the near term for volunteer help?
Volunteer help. Let me talk a little bit about the volunteer help that we've received, because it was huge. We've had over the past couple days either Carrie or me or someone, and you've experienced this, Chuck, because you were here. We had someone with to-do lists, volunteer opportunities. Each morning, Carrie and I would get here, about 7 o'clock, and we'd say, what do we need that volunteers can do? So people have been here, you come in, you can wash a window, you can do heavy lifting, you can pick up debris. I mean, we had all of these opportunities going on. Now we're entering into a phase where it's all going to be skilled labor. It's going to be people who are putting up drywall. It's going to be people who are cleaning the floors. So the volunteer opportunities are not as prevalent as they were. Probably almost all done. I need some books moved over to the outbuildings and some little stuff moved. After that, it will be, calling volunteers to help put everything back together. One of the things that I want for the church staff is when we do get back into all of these rooms, to have you all surround them with love and care and get them all fixed up. The story that I'd give you is from my grandmother. So every time a grandchild would move into a new apartment or new building, there Mimi was. And her job was to take the kitchen and put it all in perfectly so that you were ready to be in that kitchen and cook. And so I want you all to be a bunch of my grandmothers and get in there and get all the staff fixed up as much as possible. And I think you'll enjoy that connectivity with them as well. Is that good? So, we've done an amazing job. We'll have a little bit more, especially when we unpack the mouse and when we do all those other things. Linda.
We having evensong here?
Evensong this Thursday. So, again, programming, if we're ready, we're going to go. So Evensong, we'll have Evensong here in the parish hall. And then, that's flexibility and adaptability. We'll try doing the dinner in there and then maybe the formation opportunity in the library. So we'll play with it. One of the things that I want you all to be on the eye out for is setup and breakdown. Chris Wainscott's going to tell you, I don't need any help. And sometimes he's right. Chris Wainscott and Rusty have both been very grouchy when it comes to setup and takedown because they have their own little systems. But if we can find ways to help in that just sort of time, it frees up Chris to be able to do other things around campus. So that's my comment about that. Clergy, staff, how are they doing? Clergy are doing okay. Steve evacuated. He's up in Cape Coral. He went across. Come on up here, Steve. I'll tell your story. So he went over to the East Coast and then sort of up. He was checking in with me every day, which is great. And then I think there's one day he didn't check in, and so I made sure to call him because I was worried that he hadn't checked in. Then he ended up in Valdosta, then down to Tampa, and then a parishioner gave Kathy and Steve a couple of nights at the extended stay where they were able to have base camp until their house got power. And you're with power now, and you're back home. So the stereo is blaring. Got some. We'll get it up and running. Nicholas, of course, lives in the parsonage in Autumn Woods. That is largely okay. I forgot to check in to see if he has any damage to his pool screen or anything. But you're all okay. So he was one of those where Wi-Fi and power came back fairly quickly. Amy was doing fine, a little bit out power. One of the challenges that she is having is her daughter Elizabeth is having a difficult pregnancy. And so, a lot of worry about that. But she's off on vacation right now. She's in California with family. And then Marcella, she's doing okay. Her son Ben is with her in their apartment. She had the hopes of great power for a couple days, and then it blipped off, which is so frustrating. But she's up and running. Carrie has been doing great. She's tired, and I'm glad not to see her here today. She's probably hard at work on her computer, but she was exhausted towards the end of the week. There's a whole lot of emotion, and there's a whole lot of decision making. If you all have ever heard of decision fatigue, that's something I've heard of. A lot of that was weighing on her. Chris is around doing fun things. He's excited. And Tasha, our housekeeper, is okay, no damage. Our communications person, Elizabeth, I think she had the most damage of anyone, but she's doing okay. A little water in her rented apartment, and then frustrations with the landlord. Who did I miss? Tom and Linda. Again, the staff really, if you all see them, thank them. Linda and Tom really were here doing volunteer help, but also really tending to the office and to the Sunday school classrooms, the atrium. They did a magnificent job. And Paula's okay. She's at St. Paul. It's hard when with regard to Paula, I'd say it's hard when your entire life is disrupted, and then additional family members come and move into your home. It just frazzles anybody, especially someone who's used to routine, right? So if you're used to routine and that goes wrong, it really sends you into a little bit of a whirl. But hopefully we can get a sense of routine in for her. Trip is great. He and Kate, it was the Saturday. I looked up and I said, we're about to have construction in here. We have to have those pipes covered. And so I was texting Trip, get down here and cover these pipes. And Carrie was picking up, plastic wrap. So, and then I was looking at this project and I was thinking, I'm exhausted. I cannot be up on a ladder anymore. And so I sent a text out, and with that, David Goebel came, Mark Goebel came, all of that young men's crew. I don't know whoever else came, Ed Heyer, but I left. So I was done, I was cooked, and I think I was carrying, Mark drove up, and I had a ladder on a dolly that I was carting across the street, and Mark looked at me and said, I'll take the ladder the rest of the way, why don't you go home? But they got up there, and they got those organ pipes wrapped, which, again, you don't want all sorts of construction dust in there. So he and Kate, their apartment, they live sort of out east. They did fine. Power was a problem with them, but otherwise they were okay. A couple of days before the storm, I think it was, I looked at Tripp and I said, have you ever been through a hurricane? I don't think so. He said, no. I said, oh, well, let me just tell you what, and then afterwards, I think I said to him, you picked a really good storm to be your first hurricane. I don't think you could have done much better. So I think everybody's safe, minimal damage, exhausted, and they're working very hard to make sure you all have worship the way you expressed, and bulletins the way you all need. So when we talk about servant leadership in hearts, you have it in your clergy and staff. So make sure to thank them. Yes, Jerry. Hills and valleys.
And like a storm would be a valley.
Mm-hmm.
Can you shed light on how important valleys are to our lives?
Sure. So Jerry is asking a more of a spiritual question, which is we have hills and valleys in our lives, and how are valleys important to our faith growth, I guess. And one of my favorite prayers that I've shared with you all is, keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give thine angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. Shield the joyous. Shield the joyous. And all for thy love's sake. We walk this life, and we do want to be shielded from pain, from suffering, from misery. But it's the human experience to have those things, to have times of trouble, to have the 22nd song, my God, why have you forsaken me? But then to move into the 23rd psalm, green pastures, valleys. When we experience suffering in life, if we do so with a Christian heart, knowing that Jesus is in our lives, we grow. Without a doubt in my mind. It is through suffering that sometimes we find the most wisdom that we have in life. And it really stinks that it works that way in our life. But often that's how we grow. I think, when we are on the hills, and I talked a little bit about the heights in an email I sent you, the mountaintop experience. Here we are in the valley of Ian, and yet at the same time, as I finished my day, I thought about all of the volunteers and people who had come to this church to make a difference. And when you sit and look at the amazing generosity, care, and love that is poured into this world through people, all of the nasty people, the mean people, kind of fade away, don't they? Giving a little bit more hope. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything I missed? Jean, Helene, you all have been here helping on the finances and keeping me. Outreach. I'll talk about outreach. I mentioned a little bit about outreach in the sermon. As you all know, we've raised money for outreach for many years. The Archangel Fund for Collier County Charities. The main vehicle for that is the Art of Giving. We've done well over the years. As we sort of retooled it, we had those big fundraisers with Lady Carnarvon and then Sally Bedell Smith that gave us really huge years. And we've kind of been giving that out to charities and increasing our giving and grants. But we have extra money available to just give away right now in a time of need. And we did a little bit of that with COVID, and now we're going to do it with Ian. The vestry approved an initial budget of $100,000. We have about $300 in there right now. Over about 100 of that has been raised with the ask that we did over the summer. So that money, though, is designated for the usual grant cycle. So we have our grant cycle every year with our same charities. That has not changed. That will go forward. We'll raise money for that. We'll meet that goal. But then with this extra money, this emergency money, that's what we'll be able to grant out now. Also, I'll work with the bishop on seeing if we can get any of their money down here as well. They should do that, and I'm going to fight for that. But I'm also, you all need to, if I start getting upset about that, you all just need to say, Edward, calm down. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to let that be something that upsets me. But the bishop's been great. He was here last week. You all saw him. He's been keeping in touch with me and encouraging me, which is great. By doing that, he's doing that for you all as well. In the restoration piece, John Ike and that committee is a committee of the vestry. They'll do all their work. And then, of course, committees of the vestry report up to the vestry. So they'll make any recommendations. That'll go to the vestry. The vestry will then all talk about it and work through it. Same will happen with grants. We have our regular grant commission, and that is a committee of the vestry that reports up to there. They do that regular grant work. The vestry appointed another committee to do just this emergency work, and Mark Goebel is chair of that committee. And so they're already, they've put in all of they've reached out to all the charities. They were all due, their responses were due Friday. Do you need anything? If you need anything, tell us by Friday. That's all in. We're almost all in. The committee is processing that today, this afternoon. Tomorrow, they owe me an email with all of the recommendations. That will then go to the vestry, and then we'll discuss or grant all those charities emergency money. Well, we have a budget of $100,000. I mean, that's our initial budget. Do we have a little bit more money? Are people giving some money to that fund? Yes. If you all saw on the webpage, there's an Ian Relief button. 2 ways to give, and you can think about it: in-reach, outreach. In-reach, help us get these buildings done, right? We have insurance, but are we going to go over? So, that option is there. And love is pouring in from around the area. My in-laws made an announcement at their church, and, that church experienced Katrina. So, about, $1,200 from Bay St. Louis, right, coming to help us rebuild. And then, of course, right below that is the Ian Relief, which goes into all of the grants. Mark, you had a question?
Some of these organizations said that we were the first ones to contact them. I wanted everybody to feel good about that. We may be cutting checks to many of them this week, which is incredible. And if you could just know how much good all of you are doing, it is just incredible. So thanks for your support in the past that got us to this level, and more on that later.
Yeah, so again, for those of you who couldn't hear, Mark is sharing that for many of these charitable organizations, we were the first people to contact them. One of the emails I got was from Guadalupe, and they were listening and to the phone call from the Grants Commission member who had called them. And of course, Trinity's picture of the the water all in, that, by the way, I took that from a kayak. My wife wasn't too happy for me being out in that. But many people have seen that picture. And so the Guadalupe Center said, here you are in the midst of recovering, and you're already reaching out to us. Now, what does that mean? It's not just us giving a pat on the back. It is us as the body of Christ with so many different talents and many members working together to do amazing ministry, to offer love and care to the world. So yes, did I have a little heavy lifting right at the beginning? Sure, but now I get to conduct a little bit, and do less hand truck work and a little bit more email work. So thank you, Mark, and you all will all be in tune. Joyce.
We keep reading about how everybody overlooks the River Park area. I wonder if there's any way that we can reach out to some of those folks who have lost everything as well. And in many cases, the wherewithal to know what to do, how to reach out to get help. I know a few years ago, you did reach out to church over in that area, and we went to the group. Unfortunately, that minister passed away, so I don't know. I know Paul Perry, who is a member of the church and on the city council, probably could give us a lead, but I just feel like that's an area that gets overlooked by everybody, and it would be a project that perhaps we could work towards.
Yeah, thank you. Joyce is asking about River Park, mentioning that she feels it's a place that's often overlooked, and what could we possibly do to help? We have not overlooked River Park. So I sent Mark Goebel out there last week to the Macedonian Mission Baptist Church to see what we could possibly help with. He reported back to me they are without a pastor. The pastor's coming in from the East Coast right now. And their church was a mess. At this point, though, and again, these things are unfolding, right? So it's day by day. We didn't feel it was safe to send parishioners in there to do any labor. Many of you, I love you, but you're not spring chickens. And so, tearing down walls may not be the best use of your time. It may be that, asking for a special grant to help them rebuild might be the better use of your talent, time, and treasure. But we have reached out. I was at lunch with the clergy. We were following up on all the pastoral care calls that we'd given out over the week, and we were at Lake Park Diner. And the general manager came over. He actually bought us dessert, which I thought was kind of nice. Then I felt like I had to eat it, though. So, people are pouring generosity into there. They're giving goods. And he says, what can I do with this? I said, you need to walk down the street to the Macedonian Mission Baptist Church, and you need to ask them if they need anything and give it to them. So, in terms of that area, we haven't overlooked it. That church has been our partner in the area. So to the extent where we've been trying to help there, that's been our partner. So we'll continue to see what more we can do. Yes, Barb, and then we'll end with a prayer.
Well, I just wondered if we could invite them to worship with us.
If we could offer them a worshiping place.
Now, if we could invite those people in River Park
Uh-huh.
to worship with us.
Yeah. Everybody's always welcome to worship. One of the things in caring for people, though, from my perspective, is you don't want to force your will on their ways. You want to walk with them. So many of those people will have their own faith communities that they worship with, that they want help with. And our job is to walk along with them and support them. So walking into the Mission Baptist Church and saying, you've got to do this, this, and this, and this. Don't you know this is what we did? that I don't think is a way to really love them. Now, if they ask for that when I go back, maybe that is something. The best thing that you can do is not ask me a question about, can we do this? The best thing is for you to actually go out there and shake hands and give people gift cards and love them, right? It doesn't take me to do this work. It just takes you going out and loving somebody. So go buy, $200 worth of gift cards and keep them in your pocket. And as you go to the grocery store and you ask someone how they're doing, if they say, I've lost everything, give them a gift card. If you are worried about people in Lake Park, go there. Ask them if you can help. And then if you find a need, tell me. If it's something I can do, I'll do it. After the early service, one of our parishioners lives in the mobile home. They have their mobile home off Bayshore, which that area has been really zapped. He came up and said, Edward, I've lost everything and everybody's struggling. And I said, well, what can I do? He said, we're trying to get the debris out and we're having trouble getting the FEMA trucks. And so we have Enrique, and Enrique will take the stuff out and get rid of it. Well, how much does Enrique charge for a load? $500 a load. I said, I'll buy one. Right? So that's an example of you are out there seeing a need. If it's something that the church can do and change and give to, we'll do it. Is that helpful? The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious Father, even as we find ourselves in the valley of Ian recovery, we pray that you would strengthen within us your Holy Spirit, that we might be agents of your love and saving help in this world, that each person we encounter we might lift up with thankfulness and with care, even as we ask you to bless our endeavors here at Trinity-by-the-Cove, to restore our buildings, that we might continue to worship in the beauty of holiness, gather for formation, Christian education, raising up children to the life in Christ, gathering in fellowship over coffee, and serving our fellow neighbors. Pray that you bless and keep us. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Again, doors always open, coffee's always here.